For the entirety of this offseason, it seems that there has been an unspoken problem that has been causing a toxic cancer inside of the Detroit Lions fan base. We're going to talk about it in this episode, folks, so don't you dare go away.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike. And as always, we're diving on in. Folks, every so often, I make episodes that are very much like this that are not exactly fun for me to make. They involve getting very truthful. They involve getting to a topic that can be very divisive. And this is a topic that just the title in it of itself is divisive, because we're talking about this offseason being a very divisive one that is based off of an unspoken problem that has led to this, what I would like to call toxic cancer, that just has kind of eroded the unity, if you will, of the entirety of the Lions fan base. Now, what am I talking about? What I am talking about is, it seems to me, as a podcaster, as somebody who, deals in this very much high-tech, medium that we podcasters use, that when it comes to fans, there is this divide about what the Lions should be doing this offseason. And because of this divide, there has become an issue where if you try to make any sort of opinion, any sort of thought, any sort of idea that goes against this very negative, very much, I would say, hey, you must do this or else mindset when it comes to particularly the edge rushing position and the defense, it's like almost as soon as you make that known, you are almost instantaneously going to get a barrage of people just absolutely, coming after you or coming after people who are like-minded as yourself. And to me, it's like, okay, I've been a podcaster now for going on, 4 years. And I've seen my fair share of, division and disagreements and all this stuff that goes on inside the Lions fan base over the past couple of off seasons. And it's like, you know what? Obviously, there's going to be disagreement. Obviously, people are not always going to agree all the time. And you know what? That's fine. But we have come to this point in the off season where it's no longer just disagreements. There is such a negative, toxic kind of cancer surrounding this offseason, surrounding this particular topic, and I've just been racking my brain for days on end trying to be like, okay, why? What in the actual thunder is causing this just manifestation of such negativity? Because I was like, are there negative people out there? Yeah, of course there are. But the sheer amount of it when it comes to this particular community, when it comes to this particular topic, it's like, okay, I could believe that, there are just a lot of very highly opinionated people out there that are like this, and that's the reason why it is. That's the reason why things are the way they are for this offseason. But the more that I thought about it, I was like, no, there's something deeper here. There's something much more inherently leading and, supplying this toxic mindset that is here. And that's where I came up with that the unspoken problem, what's causing this divide, if you will, inside of the Detroit Lions fandom, at least on the platform that I use, which is YouTube. And also you could probably say other areas where I am very, very, frequently on, such as Twitter, Facebook, and others. It's because of podcasters, which when I started going deeper into that, I realized that, okay, this is a problem that definitely needs to be talked about. Because let's just think about it here. When you think about just the edge rushing problem, the edge rushing conversation that's been going on this offseason, there have been so many fans, those that have podcasts, those that don't have podcasts, those that, make their opinions well known on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, whatever the case might be. And they have made such, comments demanding of Holmes to make a move. And these podcasters I'm talking about, and I'm not naming any names, I'm not pointing any fingers, I'm just simply throwing out a very much blanket statement here. When it comes to the podcasters that I am talking about here, when those moves or when those ideas have not been supported, they have not been brought to fruition, they inflame the hearts and minds of these fans into thinking that without the edge rusher position being fixed, that somehow the Lions defense is just going to be terrible. And it's like, dude, I understand that the edge rushing position opposite of Hutch is going to be an important one. There's no way to deny that. But just thinking that, if we do not get this one in particular edge rusher, that we're going to be terrible is just absolutely just foolhardy. Because you have to understand something here. When we're talking about the Lions defense and we're talking about, a particular player, you can't just say, it's this one player or nobody else. That's not the way football works. That's certainly not the way the Lions football has worked. That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is that when this doesn't happen, people that fall into this category of podcasters that I'm talking about, again, not naming names or pointing fingers, they start having ideas to label Holmes as a mediocre GM, a fool of a GM, or a failure of a GM because he hasn't gone out and gotten a veteran, high-end pass rusher, whether it was Myles Garrett, whether it was Max Crosby, or now as the case is with Trey Hendrickson. Yet, for all of this rhetoric that is used in these situations, a lot of the time, people that fall into this category, they completely overlook, disregard, and try to, say, it's not as important, all of the impressive work that Brad Holmes has done over the last 4 years. Such as, the trade for Goff. All the draft picks that we've gotten. Hey, how we've built this roster from literally being a burning trash bin to one of the best in the entirety of the NFL, a standard that most teams are aspiring to have. And to me, it's just like, I can't understand how you can possibly have this conversation when at the same time you completely overlook, forget, or disregard all that information that I just talked about. And that's only part of it. You've also got other people that are assuming that the other edge rusher that's in this equation, which is obviously Hutchinson, is not going to be the same player following his injury that he sustained against the Cowboys. And thus, this further preys upon this whole situation by provoking and preying upon fears of fans. And then once you get that going, those people that are in this category, podcasters and even some fans that are not podcasters but are very active in this community, they will get very verbally aggressive with anyone who disagrees with any point made. I wouldn't necessarily say they give threats, but the insults, the name calling, the just absolute lack of any sort of respect or regard for any sort of opinion, it goes just completely out the damn door. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because, like I kind of hinted at the beginning of this episode, this is not the first time we've kind of had this problem. But this particular season, it has kind of manifested into just this massive problem. Because let's think about this here for a minute, folks. The other time that the Lions fan community has had to deal with this is when we made the trade for Goff, and when Goff was first kind of getting himself settled in here. Since getting to Detroit, there have always, and I know this because I fought him for a long time, and sometimes I still do, but there have always been Lions podcasters, albeit substantially less since the beginning, that, again, want to try and degrade. They want to try and diminish Goff's success here in Detroit and act like he's not as good as he actually is. And they will then come up with every freaking excuse and thing under the sun as their reasoning as to why. Oh, they'll say that Goff is unathletic. They'll say he's a noodle arm quarterback. They'll say he's a system byproduct, whether it was with McVay, whether it was with Johnson, or now is soon to be with Morton. And it's like, okay, I have tried my absolute best with everything that I've got to, dispel these false narratives, these false thoughts, these false, pieces of information with the actual facts, the reason, the logic, and I have hammered away at this as much as I possibly can because I'm the type of person where it's like, listen, you are entitled to have your opinion. There's nothing wrong with that. But if I present you with the facts, the honest to God facts, these are not going to change. You can find them anywhere you so please. And yet, for some reason, you still inexplicably want to remain on the opposite side. It's like, okay, no matter how hard I try to dispel that, that is why we have this conversation that we're having right now about this particular offseason. Because we've already kind of had to go through this once before when we got Goff. Because it's like, no matter how much Goff plays as far as a top 5 quarterback, don't matter how many games he wins. Doesn't matter that he's the first quarterback for the Lions in over 30 years to win a playoff game. Doesn't matter that he's the first quarterback in freaking, 70 years to win 2 back-to-back division titles. Doesn't matter he's the only quarterback in Lions history to get a number 1 seed. There are people out there, and you know where they're at, that want to continue to fall into this category, and as soon as they come into any conversation, they will instantly attack verbally anybody who tries to say, oh, well, based upon this information that has been backed, substantiated, and verified by multiple reputable out areas or outsources, Goff is not this. And anybody that thinks that is just an absolute, idiot and doesn't know football. And it's the exact same conversation that we're having with this one. Whether it's about the edge rusher, whether it's about Hutch, or hell, whether it's just about the defense in general. Because you just take a step back from just the edge rusher as far as a microcosm of an individual little unit, and then you take a look at the whole damn defense. Dude, this has been by far the most frustrating topic I've had to fight back against this year, is that there are a lot of people out there who have gotten this idea, and again, I'm putting the blame on my own kind, podcasters, that think the defense without that edge rusher I talked about earlier is somehow going to fail to meet the expectations of getting us to a Super Bowl and winning a Super Bowl. And it's like, wait a minute here. Based upon what thought process? Based upon what logic? Based upon what reasoning? And the reasoning that is, given is what makes this conversation about it so very vexing for me. Because let's think about this just for half a second. I've talked about this before, but I'm just going to do this as a really quick fire session. This defense last year, which was a top 10 defense in terms of points allowed, had how many freaking other statistical categories that were also in the top 10, some of them in the top 2 or 3, and we're returning virtually almost all the same starters that we had last year when, that's right, how many players on IR that we had for the entirety of the season? I think it was, 16 some, players? So, yeah, we're bringing back everybody virtually that we had last year. So far, the only exceptions have been Carlton Davis and Zadarius Smith. But I'm still holding out that Zadarius will probably come back at some point. Carlton's obviously already out in New England. But the point of the matter is that despite returning virtually every single starter that we had last year, and despite the fact that, we had all of these injuries and we still finished as a top 10 defense in points scored, there are still people out there that think, this defense is just not good enough to win. It's not good enough to get to a Super Bowl. I'm sorry, based upon what statistical reasoning or logic are you giving that thought process from? I've talked about it so many times about how this defense is going to be better than what it was last year. Because the chances that we're going to have a freaking ridiculous amount of injuries like we did last year on the defense, very, very, very unlikely. That is the kind of stuff that happens as an anomaly, and it's like, okay, you just had a really bad year on that front. And then on top of that, it's like, well, wait a minute here. We're getting back all of these players. We improved and we got better at cornerback because Terrion Arnold's going to be better this year than he was last year. DJ Reed is better than Carlton Davis was last year. We have all of the guys that we had last year that when this defense was still pretty healthy in the beginning, we were absolutely steamrolling teams for the most part on defense. But yet somehow, because of the fact that, we haven't yet acquired that veteran edge rusher, or because of the fact people are still thinking that, because of all the injuries we had last year, we're somehow going to have that same problem again this year, that somehow this defense just cannot make it work. And I don't understand that. It's like, dude, if you're bringing back virtually every single piece you had last year, the chances of you having another season like what you had last year on defense in terms of the injury problem is very, very little. Because again, that is an anomaly that just does not typically happen. And again, to wrap this all up, this all stems from some podcasters. Again, I'm not naming names, I'm not pointing any fingers, and I'm certainly not using this to blanket all podcasters. But I'm saying some. They will push this idea, and they've pushed the other ideas that I've talked about, whether it's Goff or the edge rusher, whatever the case that I've mentioned. And they will list all of these negative reasons that I've mentioned that either can't be overcome or that they have to be solved only doing the way that they recommend or insist. And if for whatever reason that's not done, it creates this creates this tension. It creates this division. It creates hostility within the fan base. And for many viewers, I'm just going to say it. It's a massive turnoff and a disincentivization for them to tune in because it's like, why would I want to tune in to constantly get berated or constantly feel like we are in such a bad position? It's like nobody wants to hear consistent bad news. Now, I will say this. People will honor and respect if you tell them the truth. But if you're just putting out bad information or you're just putting out information to try and stir up the masses and get them all hyped up because, I think this is so terrible, there comes a point where that gets to be too much. And then what happens is it starts growing its freaking tentacles. It starts growing its freaking, arms and limbs into all these other places. And then now you have this over-infestation of negativity. And it's like, okay, somebody needs to go in there with the shears of positivity or the shears of reality and start cutting back this nonsense. So, what I'm trying to do here is that, one, I'm trying to stop this from further hurting the Lions fan community, but also the podcasting community that works very closely with that community. Because, again, when it comes to this, we as podcasters, yes, we are going to give our opinion, but there has to come a point where in an opinion, it's like, hey, you know what? We're obviously going to not agree on certain things. Because, I'm going to say this right now, disagreements on moves and decisions by the Lions by the Lions, actual team, those are going to happen. It's natural. No one is always going to agree on everything. I understand that. I'm not naive. But there is a huge difference between disagreeing like adults with reasonable, respectful discussion where not only I, the podcaster, using myself in this example, but you, the fan, can have a reasonable conversation even though we disagree. There should be no problem with that in today's day and age. The ability to communicate is instantaneous. We should be able to communicate with a high level of communication, number one, but also a high level of respect. When you start having these all-out attacks and disagreements about what you're doing, and then that leads into negativity, that negativity then gets laced with toxic criticism, which is where we're at right now. So for me, I am determined, above all else, to have a respectable, logical, and reasonable discussion on whatever the topic may be, regardless of whether we agree or don't agree. And I'm hoping that this video will remind those who have tainted and led to the erosion of the community, including myself at times, because I'll admit I do sometimes get a little hot under the collar. I'm not immune. But still, it will serve as a reminder that at times we have to do better for everyone to ensure a vibrant and wonderful ability to share ideas, opinions, and thoughts about our Detroit Lions, whether we agree or disagree. There's no reason for all this negativity, toxicity, and tearing down of each other when it's like, listen, we're just having a discussion. Nobody is, going to die because of whatever we're about to say here. Lives are not on the line. This is just meant to be fun fun conversation where we can converse and share our ideas. There does not need to be this toxic negativity where, if you don't agree with what I'm saying, then I'm just going to completely shut you off, or I'm just going to spam you with all these freaking texts, messages, whatever, or attack you somewhere else on social media. That's just ridiculous. It's immature also. So I'm hoping that this video will find a way to maybe stem the tide a little bit. But we'll see. Having said that, I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, I want to highly encourage y'all. Please make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that way you guys never miss any more content I push out. Also encourage y'all, please, to share this content so that way we can spread the message. Share it here on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Share anywhere and everywhere you possibly can. And with that being said, to everybody, again, I hope this conversation, I hope this topic was able to shed some light on this problem. I hope it was able to give you something to think about, maybe reflect, and I hope that you got something out of it. Whether this is the first time you're watching me or you guys have been watching me forever and a day. I also hope that you all have something in your lives that make you happy, make you smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.